so it would have no effect on Oregon's current laws, which are very permissive in terms of the right to choose.
Any day now, we could find out if the Supreme Court will overturn Roe versus Wade. It seems more likely than ever before, following last month's controversial leak of a draft opinion that would reverse the decades-old ruling. It would leave laws on abortion up to the states. Good evening. Thank you for staying with us. I'm Ray Gazaway.
And I'm Kelly Odzer. Steve and Deb are off tonight. Tonight, a security fence is wrapped around the Supreme Court in preparation for the high-profile decision. But what does this mean for us in the Pacific Northwest and the country as a whole? We're digging into that. Regardless of whether the Supreme Court goes where the leaked draft decision said it would last month, overturning Roe versus Wade, demonstrations are expected across the country.
Hands off our bodies!
But whichever way the ruling goes on Dobbs versus Jackson, it's far from the end of the road for one of the country's most polarizing issues.
All this would do is it would simply say that the Constitution has nothing to say about abortion,
leaving it open to Congress and individual states to make their own decisions. Currently, Oregon and Washington have some of the most protective reproductive laws in the country, and abortions will remain legal here. Governor Kate Brown said as much last month.
We will continue to make sure that resources, the $15 million that's been set aside, we're going to get that money out the door as quickly as possible to community-based organizations like Planned Parenthood so that women, people across the country and particularly in this region can access reproductive health care.
Meanwhile, more than 24 other states either will or are expected to ban abortion altogether, which is why Oregon's Planned Parenthood says they are looking to expand to help anyone who needs it. But constitutional law professor at Lewis and Clark College, Tung Yin, tells me that leaked draft is no guarantee on how the Supreme Court will ultimately decide.
I mean, it tells us that at one point, it appears that there were 5 votes that were ready to prepare to overrule Roe versus Wade and Casey. Now, will it end up that way? Perhaps. I mean, I guess you'd have to say probably, but it's not guaranteed.
How long have you waited for a 911 dispatcher to answer your call? Portland dispatchers say they are having a hard time keeping up with all the 911 calls they get. It puts non-emergency calls on long holds or means they don't get answered at all. Katu's Eric Mock now joins us live in Southeast Portland as well. Eric, what's causing these delays?
You know, the Bureau of Emergency Communication told me that they're seeing a historic high of 911 calls. In fact, he said a couple of weeks ago, they saw 40% more 911 calls than they did in the same week 2 years ago. And that means all other calls are being pushed to the back burner. When you dial the Portland Police Bureau non-emergency phone number, you may be in for a long wait.
But it's become quite common for the non-emergency number to wait much longer than we'd like because our priority is on answering the emergency 911 calls.
That's Public Information Officer for the Portland Bureau of Emergency Communications, Dan Douthit. He says they hardly have enough people to answer the 911 calls they get, much less non-emergency calls. When you say much longer than we'd like, how long are we talking here? Are we talking more than an hour or what?
Unfortunately, much more than an hour. Some people were waiting as long as 2.5 hours on Friday on the non-emergency number.
So we put it to the test.
You have reached the Portland, Oregon and Multnomah County Public Safety Non-Emergency Response Line.
We didn't have to wait very long.
For police help in Portland, press 2.
Because we didn't get a chance to. So as you just saw, the second time we dialed the non-emergency number, we were on the line for about 5 minutes. We didn't get to talk to a real person, and the call just dropped. It's not just non-emergency calls being impacted by the shortage, though. 911 callers may also have to wait longer than they should.
We've had situations where callers have been waiting several minutes or more for emergency calls, which is completely unacceptable. And so we're working to try to address that as soon as we can.
Douthit says they've got more new hires in the training pipeline as we speak, but the shortage of dispatchers is also affecting how quickly they can train them.
We can only train so many people at a time because it takes existing dispatchers to mentor, to coach new employees. And so we're kind of limited in a sense on how many trainees we can have.
And he says it can take anywhere from 18 months to 2 years for someone to become a fully certified dispatcher.
Could COVID increase your risk of developing a psychiatric condition? An Oregon State University study compared individuals who had COVID-19 to those who had other respiratory illnesses.
Once somebody's done with their acute sickness, we were hoping to see if there was any new onset of mental health disorders, something like anxiety or depression.
The study found a quarter of the COVID patients developed anxiety or a mood disorder in the weeks following their sickness.
From 3 days to that first couple months, we actually saw that there is an increased risk for individuals. About 25% of individuals present with a new onset mental health disorder.
In the long term post-COVID, Chan says participants were less likely to develop these disorders.
After that first couple months, all the way up to a year, we didn't see any changes, and we also did not see specific changes for depression.
Chan says it's too early to say how directly COVID contributes to the onset of these disorders, or if factors like stressful hospital stays, personal problems, or anxiety over the state of the world played a larger role.
It's difficult for us to say that for sure that this COVID to mental health relationship is super finite, but I think that it gives us the opportunity to say that we really need to continue researching in this area.
Right now, Oregon State researchers are further studying post-acute impacts of COVID-19.
We're digging a little bit more into those details of why it's happening and kind of what's going on.
Chan says there's much more to be learned about COVID's impact on mental health.